If you're driving in America right now, especially if you're over 65, I need you to stop what you're doing and listen to this because 3 driving rules just changed across multiple states and most people have no idea until it's already too late. I'm John from Dream Visa Updates, and what I'm about to share with you isn't speculation or fear-mongering. These changes are live right now, they're being enforced as we speak, and one wrong move, one missed detail, one tiny assumption could suddenly cost you your license, spike your insurance rates, or even strip away your right to drive completely. And here's what keeps me up at night. People are losing their driving privileges and paying massive fines before they even understand what they did wrong. That's exactly why you need to stay with me through this entire video, because I'm going to show you exactly what's changing, who's being targeted the most, and the precise steps you need to take right now to protect yourself before this system catches you off guard. Look, the way driving laws are enforced in America is experiencing a massive transformation right now. For decades, we relied on a system built on human judgment. If something went wrong, you'd usually get a warning, maybe a grace period, at least a chance to explain yourself. Those days are gone. State DMVs and transportation departments have shifted to automated systems, real-time monitoring, and enforcement policies so strict they leave virtually no room for error whatsoever. And let me be crystal clear about something. These changes don't just target reckless drivers or repeat offenders, they're hitting everyday people. Retirees who've driven safely for 40 years, commuters, parents, grandparents, people who assume they're doing everything right because they've always done everything right. The problem is, the ground is shifting beneath their feet. Across state after state, new regulations are rolling out under the banner of public safety. On paper, the goal sounds noble. Fewer accidents, fewer uninsured drivers, less distracted driving. But in practice, these rules are being enforced in ways that feel sudden, ruthless, and deeply confusing if you're not prepared. Notices get sent digitally, databases update instantly, penalties trigger automatically. In most cases, by the time a driver realizes something has changed, the system has already flagged them, penalized them, and moved on. That's why awareness isn't optional anymore, it's absolutely essential. Now, before we go any further, let me be very clear about my intention here. This isn't about creating fear or panic, this is about arming you with information. When you understand the rules ahead of time, you stay in control. When you know what the DMV is actively looking for, you can prepare. The drivers running into trouble right now aren't careless. They're uninformed. They assume renewal will work the same way it always has. They assume a one-day insurance gap won't matter. They assume glancing at their phone at a red light is harmless. Those assumptions are exactly what these new rules are designed to exploit. What we're witnessing right now is a coordinated shift happening state by state. Not all at once, but steadily, methodically. A rule starts in California, then appears in Florida, then quietly expands to Texas and Ohio. Some drivers hear about it early, most don't, and seniors are feeling the impact first, not because they're unsafe drivers, but because they're often subject to additional requirements that didn't exist 6 months ago. That's why this update deserves your complete attention, whether you're 25 or 75, because the ripple effects don't stop with one age group. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through these 3 new driving rules step by step. I'll explain what changed, why states are implementing this, and how people are getting ambushed. More importantly, I'll show you exactly what you can do right now, today, to stay compliant, avoid devastating fines, and protect your legal right to drive. Some of what I'm about to share may surprise you. Some of it may challenge everything you've believed about driving laws, but all of it is information you absolutely need before your next renewal notice, insurance payment, or routine drive turns into a nightmare you never saw coming. And as we move forward, keep this in mind. None of these rules exist in isolation. Together, they represent a completely new mindset from the DMV, a shift from occasional checks to constant verification. Once you understand that pattern, everything else starts to click into place. And that brings us to the first rule, because it's already affecting millions of older drivers right now, often without any warning whatsoever, and it changes something many people assumed was settled for life. The first major change you absolutely need to know about is mandatory vision retesting for drivers over the age of 65. And this is where countless people are getting blindsided. For years, renewing a license was routine. A form arrives in the mail. You renew online in 5 minutes. Maybe upload a new photo every few years. Done. But in several states, that entire process has quietly changed. If you're 65 or older and your license is coming up for renewal, you may no longer be allowed to renew online or by mail. Instead, you could be required to appear in person at a DMV office and pass a vision screening before your license gets approved. And for many drivers, this requirement only becomes obvious when the online system suddenly tells them they're not eligible to renew the way they always have. Here's what you need to understand. This isn't being introduced as some future idea. In some states, it's already happening right now. Drivers show up expecting a simple 5-minute renewal and leave with restrictions, delays, or instructions to see a doctor before they're allowed back behind the wheel. The reasoning behind this change is rooted in safety data. As drivers age, the risk of vision-related issues increases even when someone feels their eyesight is perfectly fine. Conditions like cataracts, glaucoma, and macular degeneration often develop gradually. Many people adjust without realizing how dramatically their vision has changed, especially when it comes to contrast sensitivity, night driving, or peripheral awareness. From the DMV's perspective, vision is one of the most critical factors in safe driving, and they've decided that relying on self-reporting is no longer acceptable. But here's where this becomes deeply personal. Imagine you've been driving for 40 years without a single serious incident. You know the roads, you know the rules inside and out. Driving represents independence, grocery runs, doctor appointments, visiting family, staying active and engaged with life. Now imagine walking into a DMV office expecting a 5-minute appointment and being handed a vision chart you haven't looked at in years. You struggle to read a few lines. The examiner tells you your vision doesn't meet the standard for unrestricted driving. Suddenly, you're not just renewing a license. You're facing the possibility of restrictions or additional medical evaluations. For many drivers, that moment is absolutely shocking, not because they're unsafe, but because nobody warned them this was coming. It's also crucial to clarify what failing or struggling with a vision test actually means, because there's tremendous fear around this. In most cases, it doesn't mean an automatic loss of your license. Often it leads to conditions. You might be required to wear corrective lenses while driving. You might be limited to daytime driving only. In some cases, you may need a follow-up exam with an eye specialist who can confirm whether your vision can be corrected to meet the standard. The problem isn't the rule itself. It's the surprise. Drivers who walk in unprepared are the ones who feel ambushed. Drivers who prepare ahead of time usually have a dramatically smoother experience. That's why preparation is absolutely everything with this first rule. If you're over 65 and your license renewal is coming up within the next year, the smartest thing you can possibly do is schedule an eye exam before the DMV ever tells you to. Make sure your prescription is current. If you need new glasses or updated lenses, handle it on your own timeline instead of under pressure at a DMV counter. If you already know you have a vision condition, talk to your eye doctor honestly about your driving. That conversation is far easier to have in a medical office than at a government counter where your license hangs in the balance. When you walk into a renewal appointment prepared, you're in control of the outcome instead of desperately reacting to it. Now, while this first rule affects older drivers the most, the second rule affects absolutely everyone, and it's one of the fastest moving changes we've seen in years. It involves car insurance, and the way the DMV now verifies coverage has changed in a way that leaves almost zero margin for error. For a long time, insurance enforcement was mostly reactive. If you got pulled over, you showed proof. If you were in an accident, coverage was checked. If your insurance lapsed quietly for a few days, you might not face consequences right away. That system no longer exists in many states. Real-time insurance verification is now directly linked to DMV databases. And the exact moment your coverage lapses, the system knows. Here's how this works. Insurance companies now report policy status electronically and continuously. If your policy expires, gets canceled, or lapses for any reason whatsoever, that information transmits to the DMV almost immediately. There's no waiting period. There's no human review asking why it happened. The system simply registers that your vehicle is no longer insured. Depending on your state, that can automatically trigger a registration suspension, fines that can range into the hundreds of dollars, and in some cases even a license suspension. And all of this can happen without you being stopped by police or involved in any incident whatsoever. What makes this especially dangerous for everyday drivers is how absurdly easy it is for a lapse to occur. A missed payment, an expired credit card on file, a bank error, switching insurance companies and assuming the dates overlap perfectly, even a single day without coverage can be enough to set the system in motion. Many drivers don't realize anything is wrong until they receive a notice in the mail, or worse, until they're told their registration is suspended and they can't legally drive their own car anymore. By that point, fixing the problem isn't just about reinstating insurance. It often involves fees, mountains of paperwork, and delays that could have been completely avoided with one simple check. This new enforcement method doesn't care about intent. It doesn't care whether you forgot, whether you were busy, whether you genuinely thought you were covered. It only sees one thing, active or inactive. That's it. And because it's automated, it moves faster than most people can possibly react. That's why staying insured now means more than just paying your bill on time. It means actively monitoring your coverage. Automatic payments help, but they're not foolproof if your payment method expires or changes without you realizing. Verifying that your policy is active, especially after renewals or provider changes, is no longer optional. It's part of responsible driving under this new system. As strict as this rule feels, it's only the beginning of where enforcement is headed. And the third rule takes that same zero-tolerance, technology-driven approach and applies it to how you behave behind the wheel, especially when it comes to distractions. The third rule is where many drivers are getting the biggest shock of their lives because it changes not just the penalties for distracted driving, but how it's enforced and what actually counts as a violation. For years, most people associated distracted driving with one thing, texting while driving. If you weren't typing a message behind the wheel, you probably assumed you were safe. That assumption is now completely outdated. Several states have expanded their distracted driving laws so broadly that behaviors many drivers considered harmless can now result in steep fines, points on your license, and even suspension if it happens more than once. And unlike the past, enforcement no longer relies only on an officer catching you in the act. Under these new rules, distracted driving is defined far more aggressively. It doesn't just include texting or holding your phone to your ear. It can include looking at your phone, scrolling a playlist, checking a notification, adjusting a navigation app, or even glancing at your screen while stopped at a red light. In some states, the vehicle doesn't even need to be moving for the law to apply. If your engine is on and you're interacting with your phone in a way an officer interprets as distraction, that can be enough. And the penalties reflect how seriously states are taking this shift. First offenses that once resulted in modest fines can now cost several $100s and add points to your driving record. Second offenses escalate quickly, sometimes leading to license suspension, mandatory safety courses, and insurance rate increases that follow you for years. What's making this rule especially impactful is the technology now being used to enforce it. Law enforcement agencies in multiple states have begun deploying advanced detection systems designed specifically to identify distracted driving behavior. These systems use high-resolution cameras, sensors, and artificial intelligence to detect when a driver's eyes are down, when a phone is being held, or when hand movement suggests device use. Some of this technology is mounted on patrol vehicles. In other cases, it's installed roadside or integrated into existing traffic monitoring infrastructure. When the system flags potential distracted driving, it alerts officers in real time or captures evidence that can be reviewed later. In some areas, this enforcement is moving toward full automation, similar to red light or speed cameras. That means you may not even realize you were cited until a notice arrives in the mail days later. There's no conversation, no warning, no chance to explain that you were stopped or that you weren't really using your phone. The system records behavior, not intent. And once again, we see the same pattern emerging. The margin for human judgment is shrinking, while the margin for error is disappearing altogether. This is where many careful drivers run into serious trouble. They don't see themselves as distracted drivers. They don't text and drive. They don't scroll social media at highway speeds. But they do glance at their phone when it buzzes. They do adjust their GPS when traffic changes. They do check a notification while waiting at a light. Under the new definitions, those moments can be enough. Picture this scenario. You're stopped at an intersection waiting for the light to change. Your phone vibrates. You look down for 1 second to see if it's urgent. A patrol car is next to you, or a camera system is monitoring the intersection. You drive away when the light turns green, thinking nothing of it. A short distance later, you're pulled over. Or days later, you receive a citation in the mail. The explanation doesn't matter. The law has already decided the outcome. The safest response to this new reality is also the simplest, even if it feels inconvenient. Your phone needs to be out of sight and out of reach while driving, not on the seat, not in the cup holder, not mounted where notifications can catch your eye. If you need navigation, set it before you start driving and leave it alone. If you need to make a call or respond to a message, pull over completely. Hands-free systems can help, but even they have limits depending on state law and how they're used. The goal isn't just to avoid a ticket. It's to eliminate situations where a system or officer can interpret your behavior as distracted. In this environment, prevention is the only reliable protection. Now, when you step back and look at all three of these rules together, a clear pattern emerges. Mandatory vision testing, real-time insurance verification, aggressive distracted driving enforcement. They may seem unrelated at first, but they're all driven by the same exact philosophy: States are moving away from occasional checks and toward constant verification. Instead of assuming compliance unless proven otherwise, the system now verifies compliance continuously. Your vision is checked more often. Your insurance status is monitored in real time. Your behavior behind the wheel is observed by technology, not just by human eyes. This represents a fundamental shift in how driving is regulated in America. In the past, many consequences followed an event, an accident, a traffic stop, a violation. Now consequences can occur without any incident at all. A missed insurance payment triggers penalties automatically. A vision issue surfaces at renewal instead of after a crash. A momentary glance at a phone can result in a citation without a single conversation. The system is designed to intervene earlier, but it also demands a dramatically higher level of awareness and responsibility from drivers. For many people, especially older drivers, this shift feels abrupt and unforgiving. It challenges the idea that experience alone keeps you safe and compliant. It requires adjusting habits that have been comfortable for decades, but understanding this pattern is genuinely empowering. Once you realize that enforcement is no longer occasional or reactive, you can adapt. You can check your insurance status regularly. You can prepare for renewals ahead of time. You can change how you handle your phone in the car. These aren't dramatic lifestyle changes. They're small adjustments that align you with how the system now works. The drivers who struggle under these new rules aren't the ones who are careless. They're the ones who assume things are the same as they've always been. The drivers who stay ahead are the ones who recognize that the rules of the road haven't just changed on paper. They've changed in how they're enforced, monitored, and penalized. And once you understand that, the remaining question becomes simple. How do you adapt in a way that protects your freedom to drive, your finances, and your peace of mind? That's exactly what we're going to talk about right now. Once you understand the pattern behind these changes, the next step becomes much clearer. The goal now isn't just to follow the rules when you're reminded to. It's to build habits that keep you compliant at all times without stress or last-minute surprises. Driving today requires a more proactive mindset than it did even 5 years ago. The system assumes that drivers are constantly verified, constantly monitored, and constantly responsible for staying up to date. When you accept that reality, adapting becomes far easier than fighting it. One of the most important adjustments is shifting how you think about routine tasks. License renewals are no longer something to handle when a reminder shows up in the mail. Insurance coverage is no longer something you set and forget. And phone use in the car is no longer something you manage moment by moment. These areas now require deliberate structure. For example, scheduling an annual vision exam, even when you feel your eyesight hasn't changed, puts you ahead of the entire process. It means that when renewal time comes, there are zero surprises. Keeping a simple monthly reminder to check your insurance status ensures that a payment error or lapse doesn't turn into an automatic penalty. And deciding ahead of time that your phone stays completely out of reach while driving removes any ambiguity about what's allowed and what isn't. For senior drivers in particular, these habits offer something critically important: control. There's a common fear that new rules are designed to slowly strip away driving privileges, but in reality, preparation often leads to the opposite outcome. When your vision is documented, your insurance is uninterrupted, and your driving behavior is clearly compliant, there's far less room for restrictions or complications. The system is looking for assurance. When you provide it consistently, you reduce the likelihood of being flagged. Independence isn't lost because of age. It's lost when people are caught unprepared by rules they didn't know had changed. It's also worth recognizing that these changes affect more than just driving. A suspended registration or license can ripple into every area of your life. It can make it harder to get to appointments, care for family members, or maintain routines that support your health and well-being. Insurance penalties can raise rates for years, affecting household budgets long after the original mistake. That's why taking these rules seriously isn't about fear. It's about protecting your quality of life. Small actions now prevent massive disruptions later. So let's bring everything together clearly. First, if you're 65 or older, expect in-person renewals and vision testing. Don't wait to be told. Prepare early. Second, treat your car insurance as something that needs active oversight. Automatic payments help, but they're not enough on their own. Verify coverage regularly and be especially careful during renewals or provider changes. Third, eliminate distractions entirely while driving. Not just texting, not just calling, but anything that draws your attention away from the road or could be interpreted as such. These steps aren't extreme. They're practical responses to how enforcement now works. And here's the most important takeaway of all. These rules are not temporary. They are expanding. States are watching each other closely, and successful enforcement models spread quickly. What starts in a handful of states often becomes standard nationwide within months. That means staying informed is no longer optional. It's part of being a responsible driver. Laws can change quietly, but consequences arrive loudly. The drivers who stay informed avoid those moments altogether. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a sense of confidence, not concern. These changes may feel overwhelming at first, but they're completely manageable when you understand them. You don't need to overhaul your life or give up driving. You just need to adjust a few habits and stay aware of how the system now operates. Knowledge is what keeps you ahead, and preparation is what keeps you protected. If this breakdown helped you understand what's changing and how to adapt, take a moment to like this video. It helps other drivers find information that really matters. Share it with someone you care about, especially a parent, a grandparent, or anyone who drives every day and might not realize these rules are already in effect. And if you want to stay ahead of future DMV updates, driving law changes, and policies that affect your daily life, make sure you're subscribed to Dream Visa Updates. I'll continue bringing you clear, straightforward explanations so you're never caught off guard. Thank you for spending this time with me. Drive safely, stay prepared, and I'll see you in the next update.